Cuba is in darkness. Cuba's whole electrical grid is gone. Gone, y'all. Ever since that orange-haired motherfucker, that fucking Oompa Loompa, took over the office and took over Venezuela, Cuba has been cut off. They're not getting medical supplies. They're not getting oil, which is not running those hospitals. They're not getting clean water, which oil helps that. Oil is the key foundation to every country. Now they're in complete darkness. So more people are going to lose their lives. That means children too. And Cubans are pissed. Protesters in Cuba attacked the Communist Party's headquarters. They are pissed off. They torched all the office furniture and they had a big ass fucking bonfire. I mean, at this point, they're gonna need light some way. There are food and fuel shortages, which means people are gonna start acting the fucking fool. And you have nobody to blame but this goddamn administration. And all for what? A regime change. That's right. They want a regime change in Cuba. So they're gonna starve civilians out to get a regime change. Can we get a regime change?
Cuba's electricity grid has now completely collapsed. The whole island is out of power after the US effectively starved it of fuel. So no fuel means no electricity, it means no water, unless you can afford to buy it very expensively from the black market, and there are now reports that even that is a struggle. So this is the first national outage. There have been local outages before, which have kept the island going, but when the whole system goes down, it's much harder to get back up and running again. So this is becoming critical. So not having electricity has been an inconvenience perhaps, but now it could very quickly turn into a humanitarian crisis if the hospitals can't operate, if the emergency services can't get about, not to mention what's happening in schools and homes. So President Trump is the only person who can solve this by allowing oil to get to the island again. They had relied on oil from Venezuela, but Trump effectively cut that off. It's just not very clear what Trump wants from Cuba to allow this stranglehold in the island effectively to be released.
Cuba's power grid has just experienced a complete collapse due to Donald Trump cutting off oil to the country. This means that schools are shutting down, children are going hungry, desalination of water is failing, and foodborne illness is spreading. Trump is causing a humanitarian crisis in Cuba. Spread the word.
Cuba is literally disappearing off the map. Right now, 10 million people are trapped in a total nationwide blackout with no end in sight. The island's largest power plant suffered a catastrophic failure, and the backup systems have zero fuel to run. Now, this isn't just about the lights. No power means no water pumps and no refrigeration. Food is rotting in the tropical heat, and hospitals are running on the brink of a total shutdown. Why is this happening? It's because the lifeline of Cuba is gone. Following the massive shift in Venezuela earlier this year, Cuba's primary oil supply has been severed by a tightening naval blockade. Enter the US's position. President Trump has transitioned from sanctions to maximum pressure. His administration's goal, a total economic squeeze to force a regime change. He's leveraging this energy collapse to push for a friendly takeover. The message from Washington is clear. No democratic reforms, no fuel. As the island nears a humanitarian breaking point, the world is watching. Is this the end of an era in Havana, or the start of a massive regional crisis? Don't worry, Cubans. Trump has already said that Cuba is next, so your turn is coming. If you like breakdowns like this, make sure to like and share this video and follow my page for more.
Trump is in the Oval Office today on Monday, March 16th, saying that he can very well take Cuba. It will be his honor to take over Cuba, and that he can very well do what he wants with Cuba. Today it was known on Monday, March 16th, that Cuba's electrical grid totally collapsed. And this is...
Hello brothers and sisters, welcome back to the channel. I'm hoping that you are doing great from wherever you're watching me from. Something is happening in Cuba, something that the world is not talking about enough. Cuba is just under a shutdown, and the shutdown that Cuba is going on is electrical shutdown. And you know, our power is so much important in a country because them backup generators have already gone off, because those were the extra sources of energy that Cuba had, or at least the few people that still ran solar energy. But this is what is happening. You've always known Trump, the United States generally, bullying other countries, what we called imperial overreach. So Trump has said that he can do whatever thing that he wants to do with Cuba because he feels like that's normal. And it is always the urge to show your military might to other people, but at what expense? Because this is going to be leaving majority of people in Cuba. There's so many jobs that are going to be lost. There's so many businesses that are shutting down right now in Cuba. And there's so many insecurities that is going on. And trust me, if according to human nature, if this goes long enough, Cuba is going to be turning into something else because there is going to be a state of lawlessness. Because when there is no power, when there's no surveillance, it means that people start acting like animals. But those are just few of the consequences that this comes with. I think at this time, let's talk about Trump. I think at this time, what Trump is doing right now, he keeps on creating enemies with at least countries that he can talk to and form allyship. Now he's saying that he can do anything that he wants with Cuba. It is crazy because what they did in Venezuela, all those sanctions that he is still doing in these places, blocking all this power supply to Cuba, it is so crazy. It is something which is uncalled for because so many things are at a stand as we are speaking. But the world is going on. Everyone keeps on saying this about Trump. But the biggest question is, when will Trump be impeached? When will Trump sit down? When will Trump be taken out of the office? Because those are the questions that we are asking. Brothers and sisters, as you watch this video, think about the devastating effects that this is going to be having to people of Cuba. Let's watch the video. I'll be back.
Due to the United States sanctions limiting their oil supply to keep their power plants running. And he's in the Oval Office stating that he can do what he wants with Cuba. This is not normal. Nothing this man does is normal. How come we haven't seen the impeachment come about yet? Nothing this man does is normal. It's not normal behavior at all.
Cuba is collapsing due to ongoing pressure from the United States. They're experiencing one of the worst economic crises since 1990, and the only way to fix it is to make a deal with Trump. Since the United States operation in Venezuela, Trump has cut off multiple resources to Cuba. The U.S. Navy has blocked all oil tankers importing oil to the country. They're going on 1 month without oil, which is causing their power plants to fail, which is also causing them to have rolling blackouts for up to 20 hours a day. The lack of oil has also caused a severe fuel shortage. It has crippled transportation and tourism in the country. Even worse, the U.S. has imposed restrictions on economic transactions, preventing U.S. businesses and citizens from engaging in trade with Cuba. There's also a food and medicine shortage. Cuba no longer has access to American banks and capital markets, meaning food and medicine can be sold, but it must be bought in cash. Trump is trying to force a friendly takeover or a significant concession from the communist government. He says he wants political change, political prisoners to be released, and the Cuban economy to be open to United States investments.
So we've got protests breaking out in Cuba. Large-scale protests have erupted across Cuba amid a severe national energy crisis. Much of the island has been plunged into prolonged blackouts, with some areas experiencing more than 20 hours without electricity each day. The crisis was triggered in part by the failure of a major power plant earlier this month, combined with long-standing fuel shortages and economic hardship. Demonstrations began around March 7th and have intensified across multiple cities. In places like Morón, protesters burned Communist Party materials and gathered outside government buildings chanting slogans like Libertad and Patria y Vida. Or I guess I should say Patria y Vida. Reports indicate clashes between demonstrators and police, including gunfire that injured some protesters. Authorities have also shut down internet access in certain areas, while videos circulating online show nighttime marches in cities still plunged into darkness. And this is coming as a result of that lifeline of oil from Venezuela being cut off. So I'll keep you guys up to date as this progresses. The best place to get direct information from me is from my email newsletter. I can't be censored there, and I go into more detail on many of these topics. So the link to that is in my profile. Click that link, drop your email in, hit subscribe, and you'll be good to go.
So Humpty Trumpty went on TV today and said, whether I free it, whether I take it, I can pretty much do whatever I want with it. And he was talking about Cuba. He said, and I quote, "They are a very weakened nation right now. Let's talk about why." Okay, so Cuba is a very weakened nation right now because they had two lifelines keeping them alive, and both of those lifelines are now gone. One being Venezuelan oil. Venezuela was sending them oil cheap, reliable, so they could keep the energy going, keeping the lights on. They're currently in a blackout. So after January 3rd, the United States Operation Absolute Resolve, they captured Maduro, and Venezuela was no longer able to continue sending oil to Cuba. Number two was Iran. Lifeline number two for Cuba was Iran. So when Iran was bombed, the financial and strategic support that they were giving Cuba had been cut off, because now they are having to send missiles and defense and the Strait of Hormuz in the ships and everything that's going on with that. So now they can no longer continue to support Cuba in the way that they were before. So in 60 days alone, the United States of America cut off two of Cuba's lifelines. So now they are without power, they are without oil, and they are without food. They are literally being starved to death. That is a tactic of warfare. So apparently, and I haven't seen anybody else really saying anything about this, but apparently the CSIS, which is the Center for Strategic and International Studies, said that they had been picking up signals, Chinese signals, all over Cuba. So the word going around is that China has spy bases in Cuba. I don't know. Don't quote me. I don't know. So the U.S. House of Homeland Security Committee thinks that Cuba has expanding military and spy bases all over Cuba, and that the Chinese Communist Party is spreading its little hooks into the United States. So they're all up in arms because they think the Chinese Communist Party is teaming up with Cuba to strategize against the United States. That's coming from the U.S. Congress. That's not coming from me, okay? I'm just telling y'all what they be saying. Then you got Russia. So Russia entered into a new intergovernmental agreement with Cuba in October of 2025. So Cuba has deep military ties and intelligence ties with Russia and China. And the U.S. Congress is saying that there is a very visible shift to cyber and electronic warfare. So if Russia and China are both having military and spy operations, that's what the U.S. House said, 90 miles away from the United States in Cuba, yeah, they're a little bit worried. So then we got Humpty Trumpty explaining exactly what he's doing in his own words. China wants to make a deal, and I think pretty soon we will either make a deal or we will do whatever we have to do. All right, so make a deal or do whatever we have to do. Well, he already did what he thought he had to do when it came to Venezuela by kidnapping their president or their leader, Maduro. And he did what he thought he had to do when he bombed Iran in the middle of negotiations for peace. And here you go talking about we gonna take Cuba, whether that means free or take it, and I'm gonna do whatever I want with it. Okay, so let's connect all of this together, right? We got Congo. Congo has the cobalt, and China controls the cobalt mines. 15 out of 19 of those mines. Sudan has the gold and has the Red Sea coastline. The UAE is funding the genocide that's happening to the Sudanese people. Iran has the Strait of Hormuz and has oil, which America has bombed under the direction of is not real. Venezuela has the world's largest oil reserve on the planet, and America kidnapped their leader, their president. So then you have Cuba. Cuba has Chinese and Russian intelligence knocking on America's door, the United States' door. So what it really comes down to is this is not about freedom. This is not about democracy. This is not about communism. This is not a war on terror like they've been telling you since we were kids. This is basically about America realizing a little too late that China and Russia have been setting up shop in our own backyard. While America was busy bombing the Levant, the Middle East, China built spy bases in Cuba. While America was sanctioning Venezuela, Russia signed military cooperation deals with Cuba. While America was so focused on Ukraine, the Western Hemisphere was literally being repositioned completely. Now Trump is trying to clean it up all at once. He's trying to get his grips back on everything because everything is slipping out of America's hands. Remember, I told y'all this is all about who controls the resources, because who controls the resources controls the modern Western world, or the modern world, period. Gaza, Lebanon, Sudan, Congo, Iran, Venezuela. This is all one project. Resources, geography, power. And the people who always pay the price are the people who live on these lands. Now you see why he's doing what he's doing to Cuba. If you haven't connected the dots yet, go and watch my whole playlist where we bring all of this together, break it all down. And remember to go follow creators from these places who are speaking up and trying to make y'all understand and make us understand what's going on, because we all need to see how this all connects. This is one big project. This is one big plan. This was never a war.
Trump is illegally blocking and breaking all international laws right now when it comes to Cuba. And he's only doing this to place Cuba back into the hands of the elite few who fled Fidel Castro's dictatorship during the 1960s. And we need to remember, all of those people who fled Cuba during the 1960s were the light, white, skinned people who had money, the elites of Cuba. I don't know if y'all noticed, but we often don't see dark-skinned Cubans here in the U.S. I'm not saying they don't exist here. I'm saying that we don't often see them because they didn't have the money to flee over here during the Castro regime, which obviously still continues. So all of these Cubans that are here now that consistently vote for red and against their own interest, it's my speculation, but I truly believe that they're fighting for this so that they can go back to their land and control it like they controlled it before, where just a few had money, a few controlled the wealth of the country, and most people were poor, i.e. most of the black and mixed race people were poor, and most of the lighter skinned people over there were rich. And if you really don't know what's happening right now, because Venezuela was one of their biggest exporters of petroleum towards Cuba, and now that Trump has control of Venezuela, he's literally blocking Venezuela from sending any petroleum. He also is making sure that no other country is sending aid to Cuba as well, by saying that if you do, there's going to be tariffs on your country. Because Mexico sure did try to send some petroleum, and the US blocked it. Right now, Cuba has been almost 3 weeks without any petroleum, which means they don't have access to medical system, no energy to cook. Like, let's be for real, 95% of the population doesn't have access to petroleum. That's literally their whole lives. And we like to talk about Cuba and it being communist, which is one of the reasons why Trump is doing this, so that they can stop being communist and more democratic, right? So then these old Cubans could come back and rule the country, right? But although Cuba has not progressed in their structure wise, why is it that they have great education? Why is it that people at least have basic food? I'm not saying it's the best conditions, but obviously it's not the best conditions because the US is literally blocking all countries from working with Cuba. And this is not just a now thing. It's been happening for decades now. So if you're being blocked from the whole world, how do you expect a country to grow and to progress? And although in spite of all those blockages, they're still able to have a better medical system and better education system than we do as a first world country. So is it that they don't know how to govern themselves, or is it that the US has been a bully, which has affected their ability to progress?
Right now, Cuba is going through one of its toughest periods in decades. Across the island, people are dealing with long power outages, fuel shortages, and disruptions to daily life. Part of the reason goes back decades. The US embargo on Cuba began in the early 1960s after the Cuban Revolution, when the Cuban government took over American-owned businesses and property on the island. Since then, US government has kept economic limits in place, meaning restrictions on trade, money, and access to goods, as a way of pressuring the Cuban government over political freedom and human rights. Some of these restrictions were eased in the 2010s, but then tightened again in later years. Cuba depended largely on Venezuela for their oil. After the US intervened in Venezuela earlier this year and captured President Nicolas Maduro, shipments of Venezuelan oil to Cuba stopped. And at the same time, the US pressured other countries to stop sending fuel to Cuba, which pushed Cuba deeper into its energy crisis. Now, there's a lot more to tell about this story. As Caribbean people, Naturally, the Cubans have been very resilient, but the struggle is still very real. Let me know if I should make a part 2, talking more about the situation.
Bro, I'm not gonna lie. This story right here should have way more people paying attention to it. Cuba just got hit with another massive nationwide blackout, leaving millions of people with no power. Reports are saying their electrical grid collapsed again, and they're blaming the US. And I feel like, in my opinion, rightfully so. They said they haven't had oil in 3 months, fool. And then on top of that, Trump was like, he think he'll have the honor of taking over Cuba. He said, whether I free it, I take it, I can do whatever I want with it. So let me get this straight. He took over Venezuela. He said he gonna take over Greenland. And now Cuba? So the whole country is in survival mode. They have no power, no way to communicate, no way to make food, no medical attention. And then on top of all of that, they gotta worry about maybe them getting invaded and getting taken over. Allegedly, in my opinion, this was the plan all along. Have them go with no oil, the power go out, then you see people in the streets looting, doing all this other shit because they don't have no power, no food, so the whole country's going to shit. Then the US take over.
Hello brothers and sisters, welcome back to the channel. I'm hoping that you are doing great from whatever you're watching this video from. And as you know, I'm your host and presenter Geopolitics Stories. I think until this time, Trump has just been proving, and this is what the United States has been doing, imperial overreach, trying to sanction other countries so that they can buy using dollar. Because that's the most fearful thing that Trump fears. So what does he do? If he gets those countries that he can bully like easily, then that's what he does. Because that's what he does the best, that's what he does the most, and this is what he is good at. So all we are seeing right now, we are seeing a leader that keeps on bullying other countries. But the world is just watching this. And I think this is the point in history, or this is the time in history that Americans need to decide that we are going to impeach this person. This is the time in history that Americans need to decide that we are done with this person, because the consequences, because everything that he's doing right now to the people of the United States keep on affecting the citizens of the United States. And this is not something which is fair. This is not something that should be celebrated, because this is something that is crazy. Until this point, what we are looking at, Trump hasn't even done with Iran. Trump hasn't even done solving the problems that he has, but he's still creating enemies. He still goes out there, still creating enemies with people. So this is what he is good at. This is what he does most. And time has proven this, because he keeps doing this to the people of America. Now look at what he's doing in Cuba, without even caring the devastating effects in what this is going to do to the Cuban economy, because this is going to shut down the Cuban economy. And before people realize about it, the effects has been done, and it's crazy. Things are getting wild in Cuba. I mean, just like any other society, when there is no surveillance, when there is no power, there is no electricity, there are higher chances that Cuba is going to turn into a state of lawlessness. And I think that's what Trump wants, so that he can amass his own control and use American soldiers or use American military to say that we are going to bring order in Cuba. Yet he is the one that has created that chaos. What are we seeing? We are seeing a repeated pattern, because the United States is so good at this. I'm talking about imperial overreach. So this is how it happens. First, create the problem. After creating the problem, create a perfect condition to make the world see that indeed there is a problem. Now what do you do next? Now come again as the person that is coming up with the solution. And I think this is how this group of all these folks operate. That's how they operate, because they create a problem. They ensure that the world knows it being broadcasted everywhere. And then the next thing that they do is to come as the saviors. And the United States has been doing this to other countries. For the longest time, this is what it has been doing to other countries. Just think about it. This has been happening for a long time. And this has been going on for a long time. And I think this needs to be stopped. Somebody needs to come and put a stop at this. Because this is craziness. This is craziness in real time. What we are right now seeing is just craziness in real time. And somebody needs to come out and talk about this. Because honestly, how this is going, this is something that needs to be talked about. And I think if Americans got an opportunity, it should stop this. Somebody's saying that this is what the Cubans in the United States voted for. American Cubans voted overwhelmingly for this criminal in the White House. He's rounded them up. He's deporting them. He disappeared them. They voted for this. Yeah, I think it is good to call things the way they are. And yeah, we had Cuban Americans, especially people, majority of the Hispanic community, have been having problems with the decisions that they make, especially when it comes to Trump. But again, as it turns out, when mass deportations happen, they be the first people to be deported. And even crazy thing is that Trump uses Latinos, so Trump uses Hispanic or Cubans to deport their fellow people. And so this leaves a lot of questions in the room, because all these problems, like honestly, succumbs back to as the person who decided to make this decision. Trust me, if they made the right decision, I believe that this would have not been happening. So all of these are happening because we have a group of people, or we have a group of folks that they decided that they are not going to make the right decision. And so all you see, like right now, everything that is happening is affecting all these folks. It is because of the wrong decision that they made. Somebody's also saying that this is a crime against humanity, vicious, cruel, and vile. The usual tactic of reparations is a crime. Yeah, indeed, it's a crime. And we are all seeing that. The world is seeing what the United States is doing. And the United States will one day be judged in front of everyone. People are losing hope in the United States because there is a repeated pattern that it keeps on doing to the American citizens, people outside. Look at what it did to Venezuela just months ago. Now it's using the same to do it in Cuba. And we are all seeing history repeating itself. Somebody saying that, Trump, you are going to pay heavily for your evilness. Father God, please watch over Cuba and your people. Do not allow that to accomplish his goal. And that's Trump. That's Trump for you. That's what he's been doing. That's just what he is good at. So brothers and sisters, please let me know what to think about this video. And as you know, I'm your host and presenter, Geopolitics Stories. But until then, I'm hoping to see you on my next video. Peace, love, and harmony. Salute.